It's one of the right's favorite talking points, not just from Milwaukee, but for all Democratic-run cities, that those cities are crime-infested shitholes, where life is miserable and everyone hates everybody.
Overall violent crime down 15% from last year. Murders down 26%. By every national metric, crime is down.
Now, all of this, by the way, is not to say that gun crime does not exist. Of course it does. And some cities are worse than others. But here's the thing, and I say this with all due respect. The balls of these right-wing motherfuckers talking about how there's too much gun crime and chaos in our democratic cities, when Republicans are the ones who've enabled the flood of illegal weaponry into our cities in the first place.
Well, I guess I'll be your right-wing mother because you're wrong. It's also important to look at this through the filter of what is the Second Amendment? So even if the case could be made, and it can't, the way that Jon Stewart makes it, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because do you have the right to defend yourself or do you not? Well, we have the Second Amendment that says you do. And we have Supreme Court rulings that say you do. Now, let me be really clear here. Jon Stewart is one of the best ever at what he does. I think he's progressively gotten more left, and I think that he proselytizes a little bit more now. I think he's far and away funnier than Bill Maher or Trevor Noah. You can comment below. I think he's really good at what he does. I think he's a very smart guy. This segment, however, is wrong. And I will tell you exactly why all of it is wrong. But he wants to make the case, if you haven't gone and watched this, and it's been making the rounds, it's gotten millions of plays, that actually crime is down across the country, and certainly in big blue cities. And the crime in big blue cities is actually the result of Republican gun policies. Here's a montage.
It's one of the right's favorite talking points, not just from Milwaukee, but for all Democratic-run cities, that those cities are crime-infested shitholes, where life is miserable and everyone hates everybody. By the way, it does turn out the crime is actually down.
The FBI reporting the nation's violent crime rate has dropped dramatically this year.
Overall violent crime down 15% from last year. Murders down 26%. By every national metric, crime is down.
That's so much.
Solid trend. Now, all of this, by the way, is not to say that gun crime does not exist. Of course it does. And some cities are worse than others. But here's the thing, and I say this with all due respect. The balls of these right-wing motherfuckers talking about how there's too much gun crime and chaos in our democratic cities, when Republicans are the ones who've enabled the flood of illegal weaponry into our cities in the first place. 93% of the illegal guns used in crimes in New York City aren't from here. The guns come from states like Florida and Georgia and South Carolina, where the gun laws are lax.
Well, I guess I'll be your right-wing mother because you're wrong. And here's the thing. Jon Stewart is very, very smart. So I don't know if it's people who've gotten him information that he hasn't taken the time to fact-check, or I don't know if he knows that these are misleading statistics, and by that I mean flat-out incorrect, and is simply deciding to use them anyway to score political points. I'd like to think it's not the latter. All I know is that it is incorrect, and I will provide all references, link in the description or louderwithcrowder.com. Let's go through it point by point. Here's a claim that he makes, that crime is actually down in major cities.
It's one of the right's favorite talking points, not just from Milwaukee, but for all Democratic-run cities. It does turn out the crime is actually down.
Okay, here's the truth. No, crime is up. Now, when he says crime is down, what he's referring to is this new trend of underreporting crime. So I'm going to disabuse you of this notion, the basis of his argument. So let me give you some information here. 2021, the FBI started accepting data from only one source. This was a change of course. This is not how they did it before. This will affect crime statistics. And that source is the National Incident-Based Reporting System, NIBRS, even though it's not even shorter to say. 2022.
Nibbers.
Yes. 2022.
Nibbid.
Almost 1/3 of law enforcement, all law enforcement agencies, don't report any data to the NIBRS. Then by 2023, still almost 1/4 not reporting at all. Now, let me read this for you. The National Crime Victimization Survey, which interviews citizens directly, They report that only 4 in 10 violent crimes are reported at all. Only 3 in 10 property crimes are reported. So it's like, if you only count the calories you eat while you're sober, fine, but you're still going to end up dying in the street.
Hey, man, you don't know that. Well, I am a car.
I didn't know.
You are.
So probably.
Well, if it's Everclear, you could fuel it.
Hey, ethanol.
Here's another truth. Okay? Once we've established they've fundamentally changed their method of reporting, and also the why there would matter, I can't give you that answer definitively. I can guess as to why they would decide to report it differently when they've had a crime wave, the likes of which we haven't seen in many, many, many years, and they need to, for political expediency, reduce it. Let's just change the reporting mechanisms. But the truth is, crime is up. And certainly in the context of what Republicans and Donald Trump have been saying, murders in big cities are higher, much higher than pre-COVID levels. Okay, let's look at New York City. All right, 2017, 292. That was a 70-year low. 2020, 468. Let's look at Biden's New York City. That's Trump beginning to end. You have 488, 438, and then all of a sudden 386. But the crime reporting is not the same as it used to be. And when asked to explain the rising crime, New York City Mayor Eric Adams had this to say.
First woman of color to be the commissioner. First Spanish speaking to be the commissioner in the police department. First Trinidadian to be a deputy mayor. First Dominican to be a deputy mayor. First African American to be the first deputy mayor. Second African American to be the chief of staff. Why? The first one was by David Dinkins. When you look at our administration, first Indian American to be a deputy mayor, first Filipino American to be a deputy mayor, first Korean American to head small business services. You look at our administration and you will see for yourself, we got all of this chocolate running the city.
Well,
If you say so.
I wouldn't have said it like that.
So,
Is that why they have so much diabetes?
violent crime is up. And by the way, you see the same trend across most major cities, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles, and yes, the one that was mentioned, Milwaukee. So we have crimes not being reported the same way. We have an overall trend of certainly before that method of reporting and continuing with that method of reporting if you go to pre-COVID levels. We have crime that is up overall. This is irrefutable. Here's another truth. These numbers are actually probably significantly worse. If you wonder why people are so concerned with violent crime, while talking heads, comedians, entertainers, analysts like Jon Stewart and people at CNN don't actually think that people are suffering crime waves, well, that's also because they're experiencing something that you're missing, and a big part of that is that many crimes no longer go prosecuted at all in a lot of these cities. For example, retail theft. Right? In California, $950 or less, it's a misdemeanor. You have people who are It's just a revolving door of thieves at Walgreens. You have entire franchises that have moved out of cities. In California, things like public urination, that's not going to be prosecuted anymore. And by the way, they even have a book about it. Yeah. And
Oh, my God. it's very accurate, too.
we've talked about bail reform. We've talked about no cash bail. We've talked about the recidivism. We've had stories here where people have committed, I believe one of them was 70-something crimes, and they were back out on the streets. It happens all the time. So you have crimes that aren't being listed at all as crimes, right? Or they're not being prosecuted. So these criminals are free to roam in these cities, and then the citizens have to experience it. You have a very novel reporting system, a new method of reporting that, by the way, is a system that at least a quarter, as far as we know right now, and for those years, at least a third of law enforcement agencies don't use. And you still have increased crime across these cities, largely in blue cities, which will bring us to the next point that he makes. Here's the claim. Well, even if you maybe believe that the crime is up, gun violence, of course, this is the term, gun violence in blue cities is actually the fault of Republicans and conservatives.
Now, all of this, by the way, is not to say that gun crime does not exist. Of course it does. And some cities are worse than others. But
Which
here's
ones?
the thing, and I say this with all due respect. The balls of these right-wing motherfuckers talking about how there's too much gun crime and chaos in our democratic cities, when Republicans are the ones who've enabled the flood of illegal weaponry into our cities in the first place.
Let me just go to the truth. And I'll start it with a question. What about their cities? This is the easiest way to debunk this, and I know he's a rational person. You cannot make the argument that in these blue cities, gun crime is up because of the red districts where they have higher gun ownership, but they don't have crime. So let me give you some stats here. The gun-friendly states, right, and the suburbs they're in, these are the safest areas in America. So in 2020, 2% of U.S. counties had 56% of all the murders.
Wow, I bet you I can guess them.
And all of the high murder counties have a Democrat mayor. All of them. Only one out of the 32 most violent counties voted for Trump. That's Kern County in California. And illegal weaponry, again, I don't know what he means. Does he mean a magazine capacity? Right. Does he mean weapons that have been purchased illegally? In other words, they haven't been purchased in the way that people in these counties in suburban high gun ownership or rural counties would purchase their firearms? Either way, the rate limiting factor is the criminal who's procuring these guns illegally. We have counties with far, far more guns than the most violent counties. They do not have the gun crime. Only the counties, these major cities where we have seen increased crime, increased violent crime, which are entirely run by Democrats, have seen those problems. It doesn't hold water. It is completely illogical. And here's another truth that's very uncomfortable, okay? If you take out black firearm deaths, the numbers are dramatically different. Okay, it's not about race, it's about big city culture, and it's about these big city cultures, these metropolitan cultures, by the way, that are run by leftist mayors. That's what happens. So if you take the average rate of firearm deaths per 100,000, right, and you look at them by race, and we exclude suicide, right? We're talking about firearm homicides, violent crimes. Okay, 2018 to 2022, Native Americans, about 4.8 per 100,000 people. Asians, 0.9. Whites, 2.5. Black Americans, 23.8. 23.8, even though whites have the highest rate of gun ownership. Let's look at those rates. Asians, 10%. Hispanic, 20%. Black, 24%. Whites, 38%. 38% as far as gun ownership, but only 2.5 when you're talking about the actual firearm deaths per 100,000 people. It's not even close. And here's the thing. If we actually want to look at the problem and solve it, there's no running away from these numbers. All of these cities that have seen these crime waves run by Democrat mayors. You cannot escape it. The crime and the people who are most likely the victims of the crime, black Americans living in these cities. Here's another truth, okay? Rural areas where you have the highest gun ownership, see the lowest gun murders. Again, when you take out gun suicides, gun deaths in rural areas, they're less than half of urban areas. They're less than half of urban areas. More guns in these rural and suburban areas, far more guns, less than half of the actual gun deaths. It's not even close. If you want to make it's the Republicans' fault, okay, well then I guess, how would you solve it? In other words, if you say, well, we're not going to look at black firearm deaths, we're not going to look at the fact that these are run entirely by Democrat mayors. The problem is Republicans, right? The problem is Republicans and where these guns are coming from. The only way to solve that is to go to the areas that have high gun ownership, where they are not committing crimes, and take away their guns. There is no solution that couldn't involve that. Or maybe we have a problem with these cities. You starting to get the picture? And by the way, vehicular homicide in rural areas, I'm giving this one to you, it still is a problem. At that point, just get on the car.
Yeah, what are you doing? I mean, I don't even feel bad for him. I'm on the car side here.
Just crawl up
I mean,
on
obviously
it.
I'm on the car side. Look at me.
Yeah.
You can tell by my turn signals.
You have turn signals?
Yeah, look at that.
Gosh, those are.
I don't even know
Those are
how
my hazard lights.
I don't even know how we jerry-rigged that, but it also it doesn't work very well. We need a spring for better. I think I have those exact same lights
It's
as
a user
bathtub
error.
toys for
It's
my
a user.
kids.
It's me that's doing it. I don't.
That's
I
why they
don't.
got them.
I've been told I don't know how to press the buttons right. So.
So you
Yeah.
know what? I'll toss it to you guys. If you think there's anything that I've missed, again, I think Jon Stewart is brilliant. I think he's very funny. He is wrong objectively on it's not even close. It's not really something that can be up for debate as far as the numbers. The question becomes why. You can comment below.
Yeah.
Why you think it is. I don't know at this point.
He's passionate. He's a passionate dude, and I think he's passionate about it. I think it blinds him.
Yeah.
Or I think
He does.
or either blinds him, or he is busy. He doesn't. It's not his regular show anymore. He only hosts on Mondays or whatever it is. So maybe he just comes in, gets what the writers tell him. He goes, "Yeah, I agree. This is the numbers. This is crazy," and then just puts out the story because he is passionate about it.
Yeah.
And I get that. And also, there was two. You said the two counties had the 56% of the murders. Are the two counties whatever Chicago's in and New York?
2% of the murders happen. Or I'm sorry, what was the stat again?
Two counties, half the murders.
It was.
It wasn't two counties. It was something else. Go up a little further.
Oh yeah, hold on a second. Which one are we talking about?
Right there.
Yeah, 2% of the U.S. counties had 56% of the murders.
Counties,
Yes.
yeah.
2% of the counties, and these are largely, of course, Democrat major cities.
Oh, 2%. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Now, of course, the 2% of those counties have higher populations because they tend to be urban metropolitan areas.
And a lot of them have no gun law. Like they're like Chicago, no guns at all.
Yeah.
New York City, I believe, there's no guns, right? There's no handguns, nothing.
But it's not the fault of they're never responsible for their own domains, are they?
Right.
It's like, well, no, it's not my fault in this city. Remember with Chicago, Barack Obama said, no, they're getting all their guns from Indiana. Okay. What's the crime rate in
Well, I was gonna say-
rural Indiana? I went to the gun show. There wasn't a gun show loophole. They kicked me out. Now, if you mean the gun show loophole was there happened to be some gang members in the parking lot with an open trunk,
Yeah.
sure. The only solution is to take away your freedoms. If you're at a point, this is what's so scary about it. All right, hold on a second. You screwed up with your cities. No, we didn't. Well, hold on a second. When you look at the bail reform, when you look at the no cash bail, when you look at the recidivism rate, when you look at not prosecuting crimes, and you look at, oh, no, it's the suburbs and it's the rural areas. They have all the guns, and those guns are making it here. It's like, well, okay, you're saying that their guns are making it here, but their guns are already there, and they don't have the problem.
Yes.
I wonder how many of these illegal gun crimes he's talking about are just possession charges.
Right.
Well,
Like no one used a gun for a crime in a crime. They just got caught carrying a weapon in a place where I think that's a huge number of these illegal gun crimes in places like New York and Chicago. Well, these many crimes, people arrested with guns. Well, yeah technically it's a crime.
We're using the violence.
It's like the immigration thing. Well, yeah, immigrating illegally is a crime, so that's a crime. But they're also committing other crimes.
Yeah. Well, we're using the gun homicide rates or gun death rates, and they are higher in big blue cities. But yes, people can be charged by simply carrying a firearm that would be constitutionally protected with other states who actually value the rule of law in this country. But the violent crime, that's the big difference. The violent crime is a plague in these cities. And I know what people say, well, that's because there are more people. No, we're talking about the rate per 100,000 people. But if people are closer together in a big city, okay, then I would also argue back to the first point. It's the people with the mindset that creates an all blue city and those gun laws for decades that lends itself more to no cash bail and crime. There's no escaping it when you have the contrast. There's no escaping that Detroit is the left, period, since 1961. No exceptions. There's no escaping it.
Yeah.
You've had Detroit, and you've had other counties, and every single policy they've wanted to implement, they have. There's no escaping that Chicago is the left. There's no escaping it. There's no escaping that San Francisco is the left. At a certain point, you do have to deal with it, and you can't just blame the Republican counties and those dumb hicks out there who own all the guns anyway and don't commit the crimes. It just doesn't work.
I know. And I think to go back to an earlier question about why he does, I think it's willful ignorance.
I thought you were going to say Wilford Brimley.
No, not Brimley. No, absolutely. The Sugarfoot, no. I really do think it's willful ignorance because what they're doing, there's two parts of this that really piss me off. One, Jon Stewart is making a terrible argument and he knows it. There is no way to call that illegal weaponry. Just because you've outlawed guns in New York City doesn't make a gun illegal according to the U.S. Constitution. It means that you have laws that are overreaching. But the second part of all of this is that he's trying to shill for Biden. He's trying to go, look at the job this administration is doing. In most of the other examples that I can think of Donald Trump, where maybe a stat that he has was going down, like a good economic indicator was going up, but they would say still not as good as under Obama, still not as high as the previous administration. What they're doing right now is saying, hey, look, gas prices are going down. Look, inflation is going down. Look, these things are all trending in the right direction. Yeah, but they're still 20, 30, 50% higher than under the previous administration.
Right.
So you're just correcting some of the errors that you have made, and you still haven't gotten us back to pre-COVID levels. That is the kind of reporting that you need. Mm-hmm. That is the kind of honest reporting that I think they would go, well, if Donald Trump was in office, he'd go still higher than the previous administration, even though he's making progress.
And do you know why it's the kind of reporting you need? Because it informs you so you can make decisions for your life.
Yes.
Where to move. if owning a firearm is more dangerous than being disarmed, for example, when people believe you're in greater danger having a firearm in your house. You repeat these kinds of talking points. It affects people's decisions if they believe it. The problem is it's not true.
Watch Slider with Crowder live Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.